trauma of psychosomatic healing, second brain psychology between neuroscience and clinical narrative. Dear colleagues, it is an honor to share with you the vision and clinical practice I have developed within second brain psychology. This approach arises from the fundamental question: where does the unconscious truly reside? And how can we access quickly and transformatively the deep roots of psychic and psychosomatic suffering? In my theoretical clinical model, described in my volume You, Me, and Second Brain Psychology, I propose an innovative vision. The enteric nervous system, the so-called second brain, constitutes the biological and function seat of the unconscious. This hypothesis is based on neuroscientific data showing that the gut is not just a digestive organ, but a true emotional brain. Equipped with an autonomous neural network capable of producing and modulating neurotransmitters, storing experiences and generating symbolic responses. Duality as the key to understanding. Second brain psychology is founded on duality, or our existence constantly unfolds between two poles, two brains, two languages. On one side, the first brain, the logical, rational, luminous mind, seat of conscious through analysis and planning. On the other, the second brain, the emotional, deep, often shadowing mind, seat of the unconscious, emotion, symbols, and bodily memory. This duality is reflected in all the great polarities of life: logic and emotion, light and shadow, conscious and unconscious, control and surround, fight and flight. Blockage and movement. Polarities, fight and flight, control and surround, blockage and movement are not merely abstract concepts, but manifest currently in our bodies and mind, influencing every choice, every symptoms, every relationship. Often, distress areas precisely when these polarities fail to integrate. When the dialogue between the first and the second brain is interrupted or becomes unbalanced. Second brain psychology was born as an interdisciplinary bridge that recognizes, decode, and integrate these dynamics, facilitating communication with logic and emotion, between conscious and unconscious, on promoting authentic and lasting healing. This tension between opposite poles is not merely a philosophical term, but a biological and psychological reality reflected in every choice, every symptoms, every relationship. The first brain and the second brain engage in a continuous exchange of information, signal, requests, and responses. When this dialogue is interrupted or becomes unbalanced, distress, symptoms, and extrasystole blockage emerge. In this perspective, the unconscious is not an abstract entity, but a neurological reality rooted in the second brain that stores the traces of unprocessed emotional experiences and transforms them into symbols, codes, and bodily symptoms. The second brain, therefore, not only processes emotional, but serves as a deep archive of the unconscious dynamics that guide an individual's life. The emotional matrix, identity, destiny, and difference. Alongside this dimension, second brain psychology introduces another central concept, the emotional matrix. The emotional matrix should not be confused with emotional memory. It is an innate transcultural and stable psychological structure that represents the deep organization substrate of personality and relation modalities. It manifests as a psycho-emotional field composed of codes, polarities, archetypes, colors, elements, and functional styles, which determine how each person perceives, processes, and responds to life's stimuli. This is why, even within the same family, we can observe two siblings or even diazotic twins displaying profoundly different behaviors, attitudes, and reaction, display having shared the same parents and the least apparently similar experiences. The difference does not lie so much in the even experienced, but in the innate structure of the each individual's emotional matrix. This structure acts as a filter and as a source code from which every experience is perceived, processed, and integrated. Jungian second brain psychology emphasizes how the emotional matrix in the true organization substrate of personality, capable of determining in a unique and unrepairable way the evolutionary trajectory, relational modalities, and even adaptation strategies of every human being. Thus, two siblings raised in the same environment may develop opposite polarities, different relation needs, and divergent emotional response precisely because their base matrix is different. And it is upon this the individual emotional memories are graphed. This perspective explains why second brain psychology is founded on the diagnosis and the valorization on the individual matrix and of the individual emotional matrix. Only by recognizing this structure uniqueness, it is possible to intervene in a targeting and respectful way, going beyond the simple analysis of lived experiences and manifest symptoms. The IDAT experience universally in a multicultural and marginalized context. A significant part of my professional journey has been my work with IDAT, Association for Alcohol and Drug Addiction under Arrest. This experience has been invaluable in referring and validating second brain psychology in highly diverse and challenging environments. At IDAT, I have had the opportunity to work with individuals from a wide range of backgrounds, different cultures, ethnicities, and religions, often facing a situation of social marginalization and personal hardship. This environment marked by fragility and complexity has served as a unique laboratory for testing the differences and ability of SBP. Diversity and inclusion, the participants at IDAT represent a broad spectrum of languages, cultures, and faiths. This diversity allowed me to observe firsthand how the emotional dynamics and codes of the second brain are truly universal, transcending difference in background. Method and refinement. Work in this context enabled me to further refine the SBP method, adapting into the needs of people with complex life stories, deep traumas, and varied world views. The universal language of the second brain. I have consistently observed that the emotional and symbolic language of the second brain is understood and experienced by all, regardless of their culture or religion. This confirms that SBP is a traversal tool for healing and transformation, capable of raising every human being in their authenticity. These experiences at IDAT stands as concrete evidence that the language of the second brain is universal. It demonstrates the second brain is not only effective across different cultures, races, and religions, but can also serve as a bridge for authentic human connection and transformation. Even in the most complex and marginalized environments. Clinical work, two pillars and a path to travel. The clinical work of second brain psychology is based on the two pillars: the diagnosis and identification of the individual emotional matrix, which allow intervention on the search code of personality, the coding of unconscious message stored in the second brain, to facilitate structural and lasting transformation beyond the mere resolution of symptoms. Often, those who come to the office bring with the feeling of the being blocked, unable to move forward on their path. This image, recurring even in video testimonials, becomes a metaphor for our existence, halted at crossroads on by an invisible obstacle. The physiological journey thus becomes a voyage, a journey within one's own matrix, rediscovering the forces, polarities, and codes that often unconsciously guide our choice and our limits. The second brain anatomy, function, and communication. The enteric nervous system, described by Michael Gershon, professor at La Columbia University in New York, is an autonomous system composed of about 100 million neurons, distributed along the intestine. This second brain not only regulates digestive functions, but it also a center for emotional and cognitive processing, capable of communicating bidirectionally with the central brain via the vagus nerve. Recent studies show that the enteric nervous system produces neurotransmitters such as serotonin, dopamine, and neuropeptides, which directly influence mood, pain perception, and stress responses. As highlighted by Candice Pert, these neuropeptides are key molecules in the transmission of emotion in the body and brain, creating a biological communication network that shapes our emotional experience. Emotional neurobiology and body memory. Antonio Damasio has revolutionized our understanding of emotions, demonstrating that they are not mere sensations, but integral composed of the neural processes, the gut behavior and consciousness. Emotions leave deep traces in the body, especially in the enteric system, where emotional memories can form and persist even in the absence of conscious awareness. This emotional memory, deposited in the second brain, can manifest through psychosomatic symptoms, such as gastrointestinal disorders, anxiety, panic, and other chronic conditions. Second brain psychology aims to decode these messages, interpreting them as a symbolic language that tells the emotional story of the individual. Psychosomatic blockage, fight, flight, or freeze. When opposing polarities, such as the desire to act and the fear of doing so, fail or to integrate, an emotional freeze is generated. This state manifests with physical symptoms such as tachycardia, breathing difficulties, a sense of unreality, and various somatization. Our nervous system reacts to stress through three fundamental responses: fight, flight, or freeze. In the organism cannot choose between activation, fight, withdrawal, flight, or remain stuck, freeze. A short circuit is created that can translate into psychosomatic symptoms and existential blocks. Our methodology views this blockage not as a mere malfunction, but as symbolic code to be deciphered, an interrupt narrative that needs to be rewritten. Complexity of the mind and the symbolic system. The vision integrates with neuropsychological literature that highlights the complexity of the human mind and the presence of multiple systems for processing emotional and symbols. For example, Friedrich Schiffer's dual brain psychology has emphasized the importance of dialogue between the two cerebral hemispheres in determining psychological well-being and managing internal conflicts. In my model, this perspective is broadening to include the dialogue between the central brain and the enteric nervous system, recognizing the latter's active and autonomous role in regulating deep emotional and forming the bodily unconscious. Furthermore, Luc Montagnier's research suggests the emotional memory also has a biophysical dimension. Cells communicate through electromagnetic signals that can be modulated to promote healing. This discovery opened new perspective for understanding psychosomatic healing at the molecular and energetic level. The emotional matrix profile codes and polarities. The emotional matrix as described in my work, is an innate and transcultural structure that determines how each individual experiences life's polarities, active, passive, having been, control, surrender, and shapes relation needs, reaction to events, and internal conflicts. Each matrix professes its own combination of archetypes, colors, elements, and emotional styles, which are reflected in behaviors, choice, and ways of managing relationships. A patient recounts, "When I started the journey, I felt as if I were in a room with no doors. Every attempt to get out was in vain, until I realized that the key was inside me, in my emotional structure, in my history." This awareness is the first step towards transformation. Recognize one's own matrix, learning to read its codes. Accepting one's own polarities without judgment. Clinical work on the emotional matrix makes it possible to read the individual's unique formula to identify predominant psychoenergetic polis and to intervene in a targeting way on the deep nodes that generated symptoms, conflicts, and psychosomatic blockages. The method, activeness, precision, and replicability. The strength of second brain psychology lies in its ability to diagnose and interview directly of an emotional matrix and the second brain, allowing rapid and lasting transformation, even in complex cases resistant to other approaches. The physiological journey uses a laser methodology precise, target, and replicable, which enable identification of the individual's psycho-emotional structure and action on the deep nodes generating symptoms, conflict, and psychosomatic blockages. This precision is not merely the result of a theoretical approach, but derives from meticulous and systemic work which are described in my book. Allows the same logic of intervention to be applied to different cases, maintaining consistent and reliable result over time. This method, replicability, is guaranteed by the ability to decode the emotional matrix and emotional code of each individual, applying a clinical protocol that adapts to personal specificities but allow structure and validated principles. This makes second brain psychology not only effective and fast, but also reliable and transformable to various clinical, educational, and training contexts, offering a concrete and scientific response to the challenges of contemporary psychology. The language of the second brain and psychosomatics. The second brain communicates through a non-verbal language, make up for visual sensation, symbols, images, and archetypes. This communication, often ignored by classic psychology, is instead central in second brain psychology. Psychosomatic symptoms are read as symbolic messages from the emotional matrix. Therapeutic work aims to digest unintegrated emotional events, transforming the symptoms into meaning. Emotion in this vision are a true nourishment of the individual. If digested, they become resources and tools for growth. Is not digested, they turn into blockages, symptoms, and psychosomatic distress. Emblematic clinical stories. Second brain psychology in real life. Second brain psychology finds its fullest expression in clinical practice, where the diagnosis of the emotional matrix and target intervention on the second brain make it possible to resolve emotional blockages and resist symptoms in a short time. The following stories, drawn from patients' video testimonials, illustrate the verity and path of the changes achieved, showing how the method in both replicate and customizable while maintaining a rigorous scientific structure. Carla Cobbini, from chronic anxiety and panic attacks to freedom. Carla recounts, I lived for over 30 years with anxiety and panic attacks. I tried everything, medication, traditional therapists, breathing exercises, but nothing really seemed to work. Fear had become a constant companion to be point that even leaving the house or traveling alone was impossible. Her journey with second brain psychology began with a diagnosis of her emotional matrix, which made it possible to identify the blocked polarities and emotional codes responsible for her symptoms. Carla describes the turning point. I realized I wasn't wrong, but that my emotional structure needed to be listened to and disappeared. Session after session, I felt something deep dissolve. Today, I travel alone, face life with serenity, and I'm no longer afraid of the future. Andrea Tao, from Professional Rebirth. Andrea, national lawyer, and reached a point of total blockage. I could no longer speak in public. I was afraid to make decisions. I felt a constant anxiety that blocked me even in the simpler situations. Working on his emotional matrix, it was possible to identify the simple root of his discomfort. Andrea recounts, the surprising this was the speed of the change. In just a few sessions, I regained clarity, energy, and the desire to face challenges. I understood that my anxiety was a message, not an enemy. Paolo Capizzi, regaining control of panic. Paolo, Lieutenant Colonel, had developed panic attacks. Freedom is carried and identified. I felt powerless, as if something inside me had taken control. I was afraid of losing everything I had built. Second brain psychology made it possible to work on his emotional code and the polarities of his matrix. I regained control, self-confidence, and the ability to lead others. I learned to read the signals from my body and mind. And final, Christian Bongiorno, from the prison of panic to the reconquest of freedom. Christian, a young professional, had lived for 20 years with panic attacks. That serenity limited his autonomy and freedom of movement. The fear of traveling or facing long journeys, or of using means such as trains, ships, and planes, had created a true invisible prison that seemed impossible to overcome. When the pandemic forced everyone to stay home, Christian decided to turn to second brain psychology, albeit with some skepticism about the effectiveness of psychological work at a distance. As he recounts in his testimony, I thought it wouldn't be possible to really work on myself remotely. Instead, I discovered that the method worked online too. The symptom disappears and I regained my stability. The results in less than 12 months. After 20 years of limitation, Christian regains the freedom to travel all over Italy, using every means of transport, train, ship, plane. Today I finally feel free. I can move without fear, face long journeys, and live my life without that sense of being blocked. It's like I brought back a part of myself I thought was lost forever. The case of psoriasis, when the skin speaks. A patient suffering from psoriasis and anxiety disorders. So a complete the regression of the skin condition. After 12 months of the journey, I never would have thought my skin could heal by working on my emotions. It was a revolutionary experience, the body following the mind. A journey and rebirth testimony as the key, the strength and the value of direction testimony emerge as central elements in the second brain psychology journey. Telling my story was like crossing threshold before I felt blocked as if my life were suspended. But giving voice to my journey allowed me to give meaning even to difficulties, to transform pain into awareness. This narrative dimension is an integral part of second brain psychology. Every journey is not just a set of techniques, but a journey of meaning in which the patient becomes the active protagonist of their own transformation. Narrating one's experience, putting into words what was precisely only a symptom of discomfort, represents an act of birth and reclaiming of path. Testifying to one's own change gives the person a deep sense of victory. The awareness of having success in resolving the problem translates into authentic joy, often accompanied by the spontaneous desire to share the result with others. It is not just about telling a story of healing, but about affirming one's ability to cross the crisis, overcome the block, and reclaim one's own story. Testimony, therefore, is not only a memory of the journey undertaken, but become the key that opens new possibilities, inspiring those who listen and strengthening those who tell. Thus, every shared story becomes an invitation to hope and a concrete sign that transformation is possible and real. Scientific foundation and interdisciplinarity. Second brain psychology integrates the discoveries of microaggression or enteric nervous system, can disperse theory of the molecules of emotion. Antonio Damasion's neurology of emotions, and Luc Montagnier's research on cellular electromagnetic memory. It positions itself an interdisciplinary clinical model, capable of dialoguing with neuroscience and psychosomatic, symbolic psychotherapy, PNA, and molecular biology. Future perspectives. Working on the second brain means giving individuals the possibility to unite the deep knots of their emotional history, the integralized polarities, and to access authentic and lasting psychosomatic healing. Second brain psychology represents a new frontier for the care of the person, capable of uniting scientific rigor, rapid intervention, and respect for the uniqueness of each individual. The recent years, clinical practice and scientific dimension have seen extraordinary acceleration thanks to the evolution of digital technologies. In this scenario, artificial intelligence is proving to be a valuable resource for those, like myself, working in the diagnosis, training, and dissemination of second brain psychology. Currently, I use artificial intelligence primarily as a support to four-dimensional and training to make the key concept of the method accessible, facilitate the production of education materials, and personalize learning path for colleges and users. Artificial intelligence allowed me to research a wider audience, adapt concepts to the specific needs of those approaching the SPP model, and offer up to-date and interactive tools for the personal and professional growth. I am also studying the potential of artificial intelligence for the futures of clinical practice, particularly regarding the possibility of rapidly and precisely analyzing large amounts of information collected during the psychological journey, facilitating in the perspective and identification of emotional patterns, symbolic codes, and polarities that constitute each individual's emotional matrix. Through a system of empirical analysis, data collection, and decision support, artificial intelligence could one day assist the therapists in interpreting signals, mapping relation dynamics, and developing increasingly target and personalized strategies. This remains a protected understudy not yet applied in daily clinical practice, but it opens up a scenario of great interest for the effectiveness, speed, and personalization of psychological intervention. I am also researching how people might perceive the use of artificial intelligence in clinical practice. Another fundamental, in conclusion, the future of clinical psychology lies in the integration of science, technology, and humanity. Only in this way can we continue to decode the complexity of the emotional matrix, facilitating healing, and restore to the individual the possibility of being fully themselves, in any place and at any time. For right question or further information, this is my email. Thanks a lot for your attention.